Okay, so starting out at the top, and I'm going to talk about this as if it was a statewide election like a governor's race, but same ideas apply to all lower races too in districts. The first thing a campaign has to decide what to do is, what is your goal for how many votes you think you're going to have to get to win? And that takes a lot of number crunching and analysis. That's what people like Josh spent a lot of time doing, or Peter Northcutt, for those of you that remember him back in 2010. And we start out by looking at the last couple races that are similar. So for Kansas, it would be general elections without a president running. So 98, 02, 06, 10. And you come up with about 835 to 850,000 people to turn out to vote. Okay, now we'll come up with our goal of how many votes we need. And you have to figure out, to get to that goal, you're going to have a certain number of voters that are your core voters. You know they're going to turn out to vote, and you know they're going to vote for you just because of data. And then you're going to have to figure out how many more you need to get turned out or persuade to vote for you to get to your vote goal. And this is what the campaign plans are all about. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from people that are wondering when the governor is going to start campaigning, is usually how people phrase it. They're going through this whole process right now of planning it all out, meetings, trying to figure out their messaging, what works, what doesn't work, before they roll it all out. They were focused on session, that's done now, and now they've been doing these endless meetings on campaigns. And I'll be getting a lot of that real soon myself. So when you look at the voters, we have a lot of data, spreadsheets, surveys, and you can essentially reduce every voter down to two factors if you want to overly simplify it. One is, sometimes it's called affinity. That means how likely is that person to vote for you? If you were to walk a ballot in front of them on a platter and say, vote right now, would they vote for you or not? And the other is their propensity or likelihood to vote. Some people vote all the time. They vote on everything. Others, it's much less. And in fact, in Kansas, about 21% of the voters that are on the registration list never vote at all. Now, that's because 11% of the voters are inactive status, means they probably no longer live in Kansas. They're still on the list, but they've moved on with life somewhere else. So there's people that just never vote. So when you look at affinity in Kansas, that means how likely are people to vote for Republicans? There's about 1.7 million registered voters, a little more. About 45% of those are Republican. And that has stayed fairly steady the last couple years. 25% are Democrats. Now, 10 years ago, 30% were Democrats. The Democrats are losing their percentage, their share of the registered voters in Kansas, and what's replacing them are unaffiliated, which explains some of their behavior. They've now decided to close their primaries, something we've been doing for years, but that's to try to boost their registration. And we right now in Kansas have the largest gap, just raw numbers, between Republicans and Democrats in history. Population's getting bigger, and the Republican percentage is staying the same, and the Democrats are going down, which is a good sign for us. Second sign on affinity is Gallup does this poll. It's a pretty thorough poll. They do it every year. Every month they do it, and they measure how liberal or conservative the voters are in a state. And they've been doing this for about 10 years, and they rate the state 1 to 5, 5 being just hardcore conservative, red as can be. 1 would be a very liberal state. Up until 2009, Kansas was consistently a 3. It was a purple state. It could go either way. And then that whole movement with the Tea Party and the bailouts, in 2010, Kansas jumped from a 3 to a 5, which is very rare in that Gallup poll that a state changed that much that fast. And it stayed a 5 through 2011, 12, 13, and so far in 14. And what that tells you is the voters in Kansas have shifted much more conservative, and we think it's more the fiscal conservatives. They just didn't like Obama's fiscal policies, and Obamacare has caused a lot of people just to say, yes, I'm a conservative and hardcore Republican, which is another good sign for us that the voting base in the state has changed. The first thing the governor had to do when they took over was fiscal reform. We lowered the taxes, and we cut the budget. And one of the biggest pieces of cutting the budget was reforming Medicaid, CanCare. So if you think of the budget as a pie, it was a slice. It just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, faster than revenue. It was getting bigger faster than the pie was. It was squeezing everything else out. And by completely reforming it and privatizing it, we shrunk the cost way down and actually were able to give more and better services to people. And that's a huge success. We also went to 2-year budgeting, which helped a lot. In the business environment in Kansas is getting a lot better, and it's hard to always convince the KC Star of this, but unemployment is down to 4.8%, so it's below 5 for 5 consecutive months. or not Dakota, Burdett Loomis. He's a political science professor at KU, used to work for Sebelius. We have this great quote about 3 years ago. He said, if Brownback can get unemployment below 5%, he'll be a superstar. And we keep hitting that because his son's the Democrat communications director. and the son will say, like those crazy KU professors, nobody believes him anyway. But in education, despite what the Democrats say, the governor, the state budget has gone up all 4 years for K through 12. Now, we did have the stimulus money taken away, and that's how you can play games with the numbers. But that has gone up, and I think most of you probably realize Shawnee Mission School District voted to give the teachers raises this year. And I think Lawrence is going to vote on the same thing. I mean, that's where we're able to claim that was this budget that we passed to get more money to them.